My name is Kathy Reid, and up until recently I was the Director of Developer Relations at a company called Mycroft AI. And this is what happens when you don't test your presentation as well as you should have. Mycroft AI are quite unique in that they're one of the only companies in the world that delivers a full stack open source voice solution. Now, as Tom said in his presentation just before, and first of all, he had a picture of a ZX80 up on screen. I have to gush with you all because my first computer was a ZX Spectrum. It was the model before the ZX80 and it had even less memory, and that's all right, I'll stop now. But Mycroft are unique in that we provide an open source stack. The reason that I think this is important to an open education mini-conference is because what we teach, what we deliver is rapidly changing. How many of you in the room are teachers? A few? How many of you are involved in designing curriculum or curricula? Quite a few? You've probably noticed that what you're teaching over time is changing. So we're applying very, very difficult technical concepts to the curriculum, and we're trying to deliver them in a way that they're consumable. So just as we would have delivered teaching around how to design for mechanical engineering, how to design web pages for user interfaces, how to design for desktop publishing so that it looks great, over time we're going to be designing for voice user interaction. How many of you use Siri or Cortana or Google Alexa or Google Home? Yep. How often do you get frustrated by that interaction experience? Yeah. So we're in the early days of voice user interaction design. But over time, it's something that we're going to be teaching. It's something that people are going to be using a lot more. So that's why this is in an open ed mini-conf. So just as we have a stack for something like a web application or something like a back-end server tier, a voice stack has multiple layers as well. And I'm going to spend a little bit of time going through them, but most of my presentation today is hopefully demo gods, please be in my favour. I'm actually going to demo Mycroft AI to you. Woo! So it won't just be Sage on the stage, it'll be me swearing at me telling Mycroft what to do. So at the start of a voice stack, we have a wake word, which wakes it up. We use some form of speech to text to take what we're saying and put it into some form of written character. We use intent matching so that the voice stack tries to figure out what sort of commands we're trying to run. We have skills that execute, and that at the other end of the process, we have text-to-speech, which gives us some sort of audible indicator that a command is completed or failed or errored. And it looks a little bit like this. So we start with the wake word. So in the Mycroft stack, the default wake word is Hey Mycroft. You might use Alexa, you might use OK Google. We then use what's called an utterance, set a timer for 5 minutes. Within that utterance, we have certain entities. These might also be called keywords or slots that it needs to match. It then goes and does some command execution. And then when it comes back to us, it responds with a dialogue. And that's usually some form of acknowledgement. Okay, Kathy. Because they're all in American, but I'll get to that later. I've set a timer for 5 minutes starting now. So that's our voice request response lifecycle. Just like you have a HTTP request response lifecycle, there's a lifecycle with voice as well. So we wake it up, we transcribe some speech into text, we do some intent passing, and then we come back to text-to-speech. So who wants to see Mycroft in action? Yay! Woo! Do I have to like make a sacrifice to the live demo gods? Actually, let's try that. Okay, so I just need to spin up Mycroft. Bear with me a sec. Put that over on this screen. I don't know if I have the audio out plugged in. That's a very good question, are you? This one? Okay. I swear I'm good at computers. Okay, we'll see if that works. Yep, Tully, would you like to do a test?
Last time we tried it didn't work, so we'll try again.
Go for it.
Okay.
No worries. Okie dokie. That's a terrible terminal colour. I apologise to everyone in the room. I want something a bit more contrast. Sorry? You want toy chest? Why does that not surprise me? Oh, God, no. What did I have? Oh, I can't. Thank you. See, my memory buffer's just totally overflowing. All right. So Mycroft's loading. And what Mycroft's doing at the moment is going through all the skills that I have loaded, and because I develop on this machine, there's a whole bunch of them. And it's just making sure that it can load all the skills and that it gets them all into memory. And the reason that I don't load it before I come and join you, I don't think sound's coming out, unfortunately. That's all right. What we're going to do instead, hey Mycroft, tell me how to make a margarita. Okay. So it's working. And that was just for testing because I know how to make a margarita. Sure. Can I come back to that one because it makes more sense? What I want to do first is try and get sound out of this machine to somewhere that's got sound. You know what I've done, don't you? Okay. Anyone got a favourite cocktail?
Last word?
You might have to say that a different way.
Sorry.
How do you make a last word?
A last word, okay. Hey, Mycroft, how do you make a last word?
Sorry, I couldn't find the requested drink.
Sorry. Lost word.
It's got that Aussie accent.
Well, sorry. Pina colada? Hey, Mycroft. Hey, Mycroft. How do you make a pina colada?
You'll need 3 ounce light rum, 3 tablespoons coconut milk, and 3 tablespoons spent apple. Mix with crushed ice in a blender until smooth. Pour into chilled glass, garnish and serve.
Thank you, Mycroft. Thank you for supporting my alcohol habit. So what we're seeing here is the request response life cycle.
And time.
Sorry, I promised I wouldn't use business guns. What we're seeing here is that request response life cycle, that voice stack in effect. So you can see as I say, hey Mycroft, what time is it in Kansas City?
I could not find the time zone for Kansas.
Well, you're a bit useless, aren't you? Hey Mycroft, Hey, Mycroft, what time is it in Wichita? Okay, you don't get re-imaged just yet. Sorry? I actually think my employment contract means I'm not allowed to respond to that question. And I actually know what the bug is with Kansas City. It can't actually handle two-word names. We know about that bug. But you can see what it's doing is triggering on the wake word, on the hot word. Then what it's doing, is anyone sensitive to lasers?
Technically, yes.
Sorry, Kathy? Yep. So at the moment we use a cloud-based provider, but we anonymise everything before it goes off to the cloud so it can't be traced back to a single person. And the reason we do that, and I'm going to apologise now because I know that you work for Mozilla, what we want to do is make Mozilla our default, make Mozilla Deep Speech our default, but at the moment the accuracy level of deep speech isn't quite where we need it, but we're working on that. I'll get to that. So at the moment we're using Google STT as our default. You can reconfigure it to use other STT providers, like Mary STT, so you can configure that at the moment. So you can see here that it's doing, can everyone see the laser? There's no cats in the room, they're not going to jump on the screen or anything. I like cats. No, I'll be good. I don't want to breach the code of conduct. So you can see here that it's transcribing the utterance. And can anybody have a guess what the entities are in that phrase? So remember how I said we had keyword slots to fill? Yes. Time? In's not one of them. Wichita. Who said Wichita? Yay! If I had lollies to give you, I'd be throwing you lollies now, so please imagine I'm throwing you lollies. I wasn't that organised, my apologies. So that's exactly what it's doing. We're using an intent parser to say, hey, if you see the keyword time, you need to figure out that it's the time skill, and then what you should expect after time is the location. And if we fix the bug where it's got the two words and it can't handle because it's limited by a white space, anyway, it knows that it's the time skill and it passes the value Wichita to the time skill. Just like, can we have a guess at what it was doing for the cocktail skill? Anyone else have a favourite cocktail and I'll run it again? Ooh, I'm not sure.
Molotov.
Daniel, you used to work in QA, didn't you? Sorry? Let's find out.
We're running off course, so.
Hey, Mycroft, how do I make a Molotov cocktail?
Sorry, I couldn't find the requested drink.
No terrorism for you today. But yeah, actually, that makes a very good point. It is matching based on those keywords. Yes? Rice risotto. I don't have a recipe skill loaded. So a recipe skill would be looking for how do I make a food. And I'll talk a little bit about skill disambiguation in a second. But what I can do is say something like, hey, Mycroft, tell me about risotto. And hopefully it picks up me saying risotto. Cheers, mate. So hopefully it picks up risotto and doesn't expect me to... Thanks, Mycroft. It's one of the bugs we have. So the thing that I was actually quite worried about there I speak with an Australian accent, just, in case you hadn't noticed. Because the STT, the speech to text, is trained on American speech, I was thinking I was going to have to say something like risotto. Apologies to all the Americans in the room. In order for it to pick up the correct phrase. So it has real trouble with vowel sounds that I make, because I speak Australian, and it has real trouble with the vowel sounds. So.
I have noticed that it actually has, hey,
I'm actually going to take a little bit of a diversion. I've got what?
You got 17.
17 minutes? That includes questions, doesn't it? We're going to have lots of questions. I'll try and stick to 10 minutes. When we look at our hot words, we train our hot words. So you can opt in, shush. You can opt in for, sorry, I can't find my mouse on the two screens. There we go. No, it's opt-in. It's purely opt-in. So you have to opt in for Mycroft to record your wake word. And when I joined Mycroft, I was the first technical woman to join the team. I was the first woman to join the team. I was the first Australian to join the team. So when I started,
How well did it work?
yeah, I've still got the microphone on, haven't I? Yeah. If you see my talk tomorrow, I'll talk to you about what happens when we put Mycroft in rather intimate spaces like the bedroom, and that'll be even more of a laugh. What was I saying? I got totally distracted. Thank you. Yes. So first woman, first Aussie. Now, keep in mind that at that point, the wake word had only been trained on Midwestern male accents. So before I could get some samples in the data set for the wake word to be trained, the way that I would wake up Mycroft would be to say, hey, Mycroft, and try and drop my voice about 2 octaves. And it sort of worked. But we got more female voice samples, more Australian voice samples into the data set, and it became a lot more accurate at detecting it. Which is good, because there are a lot of swear words from me in the Mycroft data set. I won't tell you what it's... It wasn't dingo, no. It was much worse than dingo, but it's really well trained on it now. So that's a little bit about the hot word and some of the trouble we have with the hot word. The hot word is always listening. So you would have seen there that it's picked it up when I didn't expect it to pick it up. And what we've done is tuned it a little bit to be a little bit more sensitive. So it picks it up more than I would expect it to, predominantly because it's collecting more of my voice samples because I'm a woman and I'm Australian and there's not many women, sorry, wrong Venn diagram, women who are Australian in the voice sample. Somebody mentioned skill disambiguation. Yep. So I'm going to try and demonstrate that now. And I need to turn my settings back up. So this is what we call an intent collision. And you'll see why I need to start Spotify. Okay, my turn. So, there. It's okay. I know how to computer. So one of the keywords that we have the most ambiguation with is the keyword called play. Thank you, Mycroft. Is it going to trigger?
Glad to be of service.
So when we say the word play, it doesn't know what I want it to play. Should I play the news? Should I play a song? Should I play a game? Exactly. So it doesn't know how to disambiguate that. Am I allowed to use the swear word that begins with B? Gee, you're a creative lot, aren't you?
to the speaker using a swear word at this point? If so, please exit the room.
No, excellent. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to see if the disambiguation works correctly, and the swearing is entirely my fault because one of my Spotify playlists is named with a swear word. Hey, Mycroft, play the playlist Acapella Bitches on Spotify. Come on. Okay, you've probably learnt more about me personally than you wanted to with that playlist. But it did a couple of things there. Did you see where it triggered and tried to disambiguate using the common play framework? Someone nodding and someone going, no, I was listening to a cappella. So what it tried to do there, you see how it's got resolving player? Oh, yeah, laser. Lasers. So you see here how it's doing resolving player for the playlist Acapella Beaches on Spotify. It knows with that playback control skill that I've used a keyword like playlist. And so it weights something like Spotify or Pandora and knows, using some sort of confidence score, that I'm probably trying to play a playlist on a music player. Whereas if I was trying to do something else, hey, Mycroft, play the news. No swearing, I promise. Oh, God.
Here is this hour's news.
NPR podcasts are now available on every platform. Check out all our shows at npr.org/podcasts.
Hey, Mycroft.
That's npr.org/podcasts.
Stop.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst.
Sorry.
As Americans honor the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., President Trump and Vice President Pence resumed the day by placing a wreath at the King Memorial in Washington. NPR's Scott Horsley has more.
The wreath laying was a low-profile event. It wasn't listed on either the president or vice president's.
Sorry, I should have warned you about the T swear word. So you can see here how it disambiguated between play the news, and it found the skill that matched news, versus play a playlist on Spotify. So we use something called a common framework, and we've built out the common play framework so that it disambiguates and does confidence scores. And next we're going to do a common query framework so that we can query Wikipedia, Wolfram Alpha, some other data set that you might want to query. So that's how we do a little bit of skill disambiguation. I've got 10 minutes to go, and I know there's going to be questions, but there's one more thing I want to show you. I'm going to put Mycroft to sleep. Bye-bye. Alrighty. So, one of the hardest parts, I've talked a little bit about STT, and I'm going to ignore STT. If you want to learn more about that, you'll have to come to my talk on Thursday in this room. But I am going to spend some time on TTS, text-to-speech. One of the biggest issues we have with text-to-speech is robotic-sounding voices. And there are some things that we can do to make them sound less robotic. What we found in practice is that you have to have a very well-trained speaker speaking at a very predetermined rate that is very consistent for around 40 to 60 hours. That sounds like hard work, but we've built a tool, completely open source, because that's who we are, which will help you record the voice that you would like to build for your TTS. So this doesn't train the voice. That's a separate piece of software which we've also released open source. But this is the Mimic Recording Studio, which will allow you to record audio which can then be fed into a training package. The way that Mimic Recording Studio works is that we have a corpus, so basically a spreadsheet, which has a whole list of utterances, so those phrases that people were speaking, and then we do a calculation, a programmatic calculation, to figure out how many characters or how long that phrase should go for. So for instance, do we have any Te Reo Maori speakers in the room? No? In Maori, there are elongated vowels and they have a double value. So if we're looking at a corpus, we have to look at the length of a vowel sound. Any Japanese speakers? Yep. So do you know when they do the elongated vowel sounds, like in Tokyo, how you've got the double O sound? Exactly the same. You have to have an elongated length. Once we have the corpus and the recording, we can then feed that into Mimic 2 and train the voice. The reason I think this is really special for the education community is that we have several hundred languages in Australia which are in danger of dying because they're Indigenous languages. We often have the last generation who learnt to speak them. And at the moment, there are no voice systems that speak Yolngu Matha or speak Walpiri. There are no voice systems that recognise Pinjajajara language. And we're losing those languages. And because technology is predominantly Anglo-centric, English-centric, it's reinforcing that shift. With open source tools, we can actually help to save endangered languages. That's all I've got to show you today. It's a little bit of a taster for Mycroft. If you're looking for us on GitHub, we're Mycroft AI on GitHub. You can find the recording studio. Anyone running a Debian-ish distro? Brilliant. Our reference distro is Ubuntu 18.04. You can download it, build it, and you can be running Mycroft in the next half an hour. I'll take questions. Kathy.
I would like to understand if you could, what I'd really like to see from something like Mycroft is I can query the internet for general things, but then I want a local command set for my IoT, for my smart home, my private smart home, so that all my IoT queries don't have to be processed outside. Do you have the framework in place for that now?
Not yet, but it's coming. And just so you know that I'm not lying, because I'm such a liar. No, I'm a liar because I thought that JavaScript was a 4GL. Thank you. So I'm looking for the link now. It's called the Personal Backend, and I don't know whether it's public yet. We'll soon find out. Aha, right. Here's where we're building it out. So at the moment, things are centralized through home.mycroft, and the code for home.mycroft is not released publicly, primarily because we have enterprise clients on there as well. What we're doing is building a cut-down version of home.mycroft, which you can configure to basically be off-net, and that's the personal backend project there. The backend is using the same API as home.mycroft, but the front end's not as mature. And we would also love contributions if you are so inclined. We do a lot of work with Python. Yes? Sure. No trouble. And if you see my GitHub, all my presentations are up on GitHub. They're using GitHub pages, so you can go back to them. That one?
No, the one with the stack, sorry. I think your first...
That one?
Yeah, I think that's the one. Yeah, so if we're keen to use a particular part of this, like for example, we only want the intent matching module, is the architecture structured that we can just pull that out, use that? Awesome.
Yep, so deliberately designed to be modular, deliberate architecture choice. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this here, but our CTO is probably the best CTO I've ever worked for. I don't think I'm violating the code of conduct to say I kind of hero worship him a little bit. And that was a deliberate design choice, modular design choice, so that you can swap in and out at those layers. Just like, you know, when everyone went from Apache HTTPD to Nginx, you just swap out a layer of your web server. We wanted to do exactly the same thing with the voice stack. I don't like that STT, it's been deprecated. They've changed their open source license and they're not open source anymore. Read us. So if you wanted to swap out a layer, it's been deliberately designed to do that. Yep. More questions, more requests for cocktails?
On a kind of practical level, at the time that you were playing a playlist, which was very noisy, you had trouble communicating with Mycroft. What is the answer to that?
Very, very good question. So at the moment, I'm using the speakers that are built into my ASUS laptop there. Sorry, the microphone that's built in. It's not the best microphone in the world. At home, I have a much nicer headset that will do barge in. So it will do enough noise cancellation to know that I'm issuing a voice command. So we call that barge in, and where we want to stop a command while it's executing. Yep.
So you're releasing custom hardware which does this sort of better or is tuned to this as well? Okay. What would you recommend?
So I like good hardware. Sorry. I don't do shoes or handbags. I do hardware. So that's running 8 cores. It's fairly beefy, but you don't need something that fast to run Mycroft. A Raspberry Pi 3 and a 3B Plus will run Mycroft. We have a custom build called Pycroft. It's up there, downloadable. The only thing with the Pycroft is that if you are off the internet, it tries to do the text-to-speech processing on the device. So it has a fallback where it will try and do the TTS on device, and that can sort of hammer the CPU a little bit. It'll run on a Pi. It'll run on a Pi. Questions, so many questions.
Thanks. So I was really interested in the mimic stuff. That seems really cool. Although, of course, the idea of giving a device my voice is definitely not anything. I never want to hear a recording of my voice ever. But it's cool that you can do that. How much data? Like you said, you know, for a professional thing, it would be sort of 48 hours. How much to get something reasonable?
The short answer is we don't know yet. I'd rather be open and transparent and honest with you. When we did the Kusal voice, my colleague Kusal sat in a recording studio and gave us about 40 to 60 hours of recording. Poor guy. We knew that we would need above 40 and somewhere close between 40 and 100. We haven't tried with less because it's not worth our time to do the training and the effort, the human effort that goes into training if we know we've only got a small data set. So we got more data in the first place knowing that we'd have more to train with. I'd be really interested to see if people train with a smaller data set. Yes? Do we need a... Sorry, Talia.
Sorry, I might be taking more than my fair share of questions. So I'm totally just guessing from what you mentioned about answered my last question about your architecture, but it seems like it's probably pretty straightforward to insert a skill if you've modularized it and all of that. So could you talk about maybe the challenges of if I was to write my own skill and insert it, presumably there's a hierarchy, or what challenges?
I'll show you. Dead easy.
Cool.
So I'm having a split brain problem here with 2 things. So I'm going to see if I can...
I don't want to distract her.
Okay.
It's on.
Sorry, I've gone way over break time. My apologies. So, just make that a bit bigger so everyone can see that okay. Yep, lovely. All our skills are written in Python. And basically we have a skill template that you use, all in Python. We have lots of examples. We have an API that you can use to do calls. We use the PIP requirements. So if you need to install a bunch of libraries, a bunch of packages, you can do that. And you specify we call it your vocab files, so where you're doing that pattern. When somebody says, I want the time in Wichita, you tell it basically here are the slots you need to fill, and you give it a bunch of dialogue files that happen and are played in certain use cases. So I didn't find the time for Kansas City because Kathy hasn't fixed the time bug because she's useless and lazy. You can program that into a skill. Adam. Oh, sorry.
One question.
I'm not coordinated with Talia, my apologies.
If someone were to donate, if someone were to donate like 100 hours of voice, what sort of licensing do you guys release it, or can?
That's a really good question. At the moment, Steve, our CTO, and I have been having this conversation for a few weeks. We're not sure whether using a voice recording to train a TTS voice is classified as a derivative work under Creative Commons. You can see the arguments for both cases. What we're anticipating is that if somebody gives us their voice recording, we're going to require it under a CC0 license if they want us to train the voice. Nothing to stop you using Mimic 2, which is for anyone into machine learning, Mimic 2 is a Tachytron-based implementation of TTS. You can train your voice data using Mimic 2 on your hardware. You don't even have to tell us about it. Yep. Adam.
Have you got any ideas or opinions on the hardware side, extending this with array microphones and things like that to make it work better?
Yep. I have lots of opinions. Sorry, that wasn't sarcasm. The answer is it really depends on what the microphone is attached into. I've done a lot of second and third level support for Mycroft, and I really, 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 really hate pulse audio, and I never want to see Ulster again as long as I possibly live. Sorry, that's still raw and bitter. Getting something like the Re speaker or the Seed, 4 and 6 speaker to work with lots of different hardware is really, really difficult. And Steve has done a lot of work in re-architecting the setup scripts to set things like, the Ulcer config to try and pick up speakers. We find the Re speaker are very, very good microphones, as is the Jabra 410 and 510. They're very, very good. The problem is in actually getting the hardware that they're running on to have them recognised. That's the issue that we have with them. The hardware's good, the automatic driver pickup's bad. Yeah.
So you mentioned that it's not worth the time to do the training if you don't have more than 40 to 60 hours of data. Is it really expensive to do the time-wise to do the training?
It's not expensive. Sorry, I'm not articulating very well. It's not worth our time and the human time to train it, refine the model and go back if we know we've only got a small data set. If someone's playing around at home and they've got some free time and they don't have an issues list a mile long, then it's a different equation. But for us, it's not where our effort's focused at the moment. Yeah. Any other questions? Going once, going twice? I'm standing between you and morning tea. No, thank you all very much for your time.